Everyone knows that Hester Peirce is my absolute favorite person in the government. She actually has some sense and some reason, and that didn't stop today when she was talking at Consensus. So Hester Peirce, SEC Commissioner, she was talking about SEC rulings and what is needed, and she says that we have work to do in modernizing our custody rules across the board. And she also said new advisors have a fiduciary responsibility to properly understand the asset class on which they're advising their clients, and the regulatory guidance issued by the SEC provides stepping stones towards that goal. But she mentioned that, these assets are completely new, and perhaps they really need to start re-envisioning what these assets are and how they classify them and all this. I'm going to throw this to the group about your thoughts. Like, is this suggesting we're going to see some things on the horizon from the SEC coming up? Are we going to see more clarity? Am I just wishful thinking right now? I'm going to throw this to you, Adam.
I wish that I wish that I felt like this meant something more than I think it does. I think what happens is these regulators, even ones who we really like a lot, come to conferences, go and talk to friendly audiences, and say things that are non-binding about what the actual regulatory body is going to do, but which indicates some level of support. In practice, we've seen that although sometimes that support can manifest into real kind of change and clarity, as we discussed yesterday, a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times it's just kind of happy talk. So I'd love it if we really saw something kind of come out of this. But on the other hand, I feel like I've been burned enough times by this exact sort of presentation that I'm going to retain my skepticism and wait until we see action manifest into real life.
Wouldn't it be great though? Like, wouldn't it be great if there was a real rethink? A lot of these custody rules, a lot of these things that sort of impede institutions and other players from investing in this asset class are rules that apply to entirely different frameworks of assets, right? So it would be nice if there was some sort of new framework development, if there was some rethink, some overhaul that spanned a lot of these alphabet soup agencies in DC and other capitals, and we saw some progress on that front. It just does seem like there's a bit of an obstacle to realizing that vision, and maybe that's fine. Maybe that's the role of government here, is to impede that breakneck innovation that a sector like crypto is offering at the present moment. Hopefully there's a happy medium, but for now, I don't know. I saw Jen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Zach, just going off what you were saying there, I feel like we constantly hear, we're working to understand. We don't fully understand. We're watching, we're trying to understand. And I want to know when they're going to understand and what's the plan? What are we doing to try and understand? Because it's getting very repetitive and I'm just tired of hearing it now.
Tell us how you really feel, Jen.
Yeah.
I think
when are we going to understand?
Part of the
what are we going to do?
Is here that once you start looking at one thing, particularly as like a bureaucratic government entity, 5 other things pop up that are either derivatives or additions to or changes on like that existing body. And tech traditionally tends to have kind of the idea of like move fast and break things, then that extends to crypto in some ways as well. Like you want to roll these products out, you want to see how much traction they get, you want to see how they scale. And, it's difficult for the SEC to, kind of keep up in that regard, particularly doing a deliberative and sort of, we're informing this panel, we're doing this sort of information study, like all of these sorts of things that take a lot more time and are honestly really, really difficult to understand from a technical perspective. It's difficult to parse out from existing securities and things like that. These are like very, very new and novel asset classes. But Adam, I had a question for you in regards, what is the correlation between silly season and happy talk? That being in this space for a while, I feel like there should be some connection there, and you're teaching me new terms every day.
Yeah. So silly season is what happens when the FOMO picks up and everybody gets so excited that literally it becomes like any sort of form of due diligence takes you out of the running, right? You need to be faster than due diligence allows. That's how you get something like silly season. Happy talk is what you get when, again, you're talking to an audience that you owe a responsibility to provide clarity to, but which at a fundamental level, the institution that you represent has little interest in doing so. There's an Upton Sinclair quote, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it." And that is fully in play here when it comes to these things. Governments and regulators walk a very fine line when it comes to all of this stuff, which is that if they just dismiss it out of hand, or if they act like they're not going to provide a framework or clarity, then people will just do what they're going to do, or they will go and they will make up their own rules, basically. But if you can keep this kind of like the pretense that eventually someday we'll understand this enough to provide the clarity that you've been asking for all along, well, then that's something where they can kind of keep us in this limbo for a long time. And I wish I wasn't this cynical about things, but honestly, having been watching it for as long as I have, it's left me very cynical. Yeah, I know. Naomi, where are you?
Adam and Ben
Who hurt you? Who hurt you, sir?
Good company there.
Everybody.
I wanted to just add to that. One of my favorite things that Hester Peirce said, and she has said this at previous consensus events, she said that language coming out of the SEC can often seem too cautionary, but it's not the regulator's role to make a judgment on an asset class. And I think that that's a pivotal point here. It's not the SEC's job to say, well, we've deemed this to be too risky, therefore people can't invest. It's the SEC's role to make sure there are proper disclosures about people who are offering these products, to say you understand the risk, not to predetermine what people's decision should be or to make that decision for them. So I think that she's right on the money there. I wish she could just overrule everyone else at the SEC and make decisions, but that's not how it works. So I'm just glad that she is at least part of the conversation.